bills and meals, but it also helps to keep the center alive. We have a lot of volunteers here that help to keep this place running, from bills to light to everything that in between. So we do have baskets. We have a basket somewhere lingering around. So we have a kata and a little red envelope form. So you could put some money or cash, and you could present that at the end of the blessing tomorrow. Some other things is. We do have a photographer, and if we're going to be posting some of these images on Facebook, and if you're uncomfortable, please tell Nathan, the photographer, that you're uncomfortable, and he will not post them. Thank you so much. And welcome to Urban.
One of those funny
Thank you.
faces, emoji faces on top of it.
Everyone knows where the restroom is. Feel free to get some tea. If you have any questions, we have a lot of volunteers who would love to answer any questions. So for those that are volunteers, please raise your hand. Yeah, we have many. Yes. So if you have any questions for us or anything, feel free to ask. And thank you for enjoying and coming to enjoy this program.
I'm going to place these envelopes on top of the donations little bin over there, that's right by the entrance. So if anyone wants to put any cash.
Okay, just tell Nathan, not a big deal. But it is true that we do like posting things on social media, and in part because I feel very strongly about that. There's so much things that is on social media that is not helpful. Um, the solution is leave it. If you have never joined it, don't touch it. Stay away. But if you're in it, don't dwell on the negatives. Flood it with other things, and that's what we're doing. We're trying to flood it with other things that are not made up, other things that are also happening in the world, right? We're not making up things that pretend that it's happening, but it's happening, and why not? People should know that as much as troubling things are being reported, good things are also happening in the world. Mm? And we happen to believe that this is a good thing. Yeah, so that's why. Um, so I want to begin now this section by reading to you, almost randomly. I'm just opening. So there is a collection of poems, um, here translated as Poems of the First Buddhist Women. It's a collection called Therigatha. Theri, Gata is like a type of verse form in Indian literature, gathas. And Theri is the feminine for elders. And these are referring to the elder disciples of the historical Buddha. So there's a collection called Therigata. There's also a collection called Theragata. Thera are the elders, the male elders. So this is the Therigata, poems of the first Buddhist women. This translation is by Charles Hallisey, a senior Buddhist studies scholar teaching at Harvard. Um, it's done a really good job in translating these poems. So just to read a few from here. This is by a woman, a nun called Vera, addressing herself, repeating what was spoken by the Buddha to her. The name you are called by means hero, Vera. It is a good name for you because of your heroic qualities. You are a nun who knows how to know well. Take care of the body, it is your last. Just make sure it doesn't become a vehicle for death after this. She's told that this is your last body because she has been freed. She's enlightened. Does it literally mean that no more bodies? It doesn't have to be that. Here, body connotes a particular relationship to this. A relationship that is burdensome, a relationship that is requires a lot of maintenance and fears and hopes, anchored to this body. So in that sense, she's done with that. Buddha said, you're done with that. Then here, you're called hero because of your heroic qualities. So it is connected to that courage, that bravery that I said is so important to be a bodhisattva, is to have courage. You are a nun who knows how to know well. So we talked about knowledge, how to know well. And what are the essentials for us to know? What are the spheres of knowing that can be liberating rather than binding us more and more and more to confusion and to the dissatisfactions that come from confusion? It's not so much that there are things that you should not know or cannot know. It's more like you should ask yourself, what's the point? Yeah, what's the point? And if you can sort out the point, then decide on that basis, rather than just simply knowing. So let me see, there's a footnote here. This collection is organized into poems with 1 verse, 2 verse, 3 verse, 4 verse, 5 verse, 6 verse, poems with about 20 verses. And then the final chapter, then about 40 verses, and then the final chapter is called Poems with under the Great Chapter. So let's see if there's something to add here. Footnotes for 2 verses, number 8. Oh, 1 verse, sorry. So this is defined here, knowing well, how to know well. It's defined here is with sense and cognitive faculties well cultivated. So sense faculties, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and then cognitive faculties, the intellect. So sight, sound, smell, taste, touch receives raw information related to seeing, hearing, tasting, touching. And then the cognitive then provides meaning. Well cultivated is what it says here. So again, the emphasis on skill, and that we have to make some choices and say, sure, I can know more about that, but what's the point? So in this context, one thing I said to myself, oh, I should say this morning, then I forgot, is that it feels like in where the point we are at now, like this saturation of things to know, information to have, right? It's good to adopt a certain, for lack of a better word, Taoist attitude to it. Especially as articulated in the famous Taoist text, the Tao Te Ching. And then even in the Chuangzi. Chuangzi has more of this kind of paradoxical things, But basically the Tao Te Ching advocates a way of life and even a society that is, he says, a sage king. I know this will sound, when it first is said, you're like, wait, what? I think that's what they're trying to do. But he says, a sage king should fill their stomachs and empty their minds. Now, footnote. Some readers of the Tao Te Ching also develop a system of thought and philosophy and statecraft known as legalism. And they are the ones who, the famous builder of the Great Wall of China, who was also a brutal dictator, adopted that view, legalism. So a certain misreading or a certain type of reading of the Tao Te Ching can turn into that. But in the Tao Te Ching is saying, there it says, actually, who is the sage king? The sage king is yourself. That you should be the sage king. And in terms of that sage king, you attend to. So what it's not literally saying, eat, drink, and be merry, and let Rome burn. But it's saying, attend to the most basic needs. Keep things small, keep things simple. So it also say that the sage king should govern the state. And there is a metaphor too of governing the self. The self is the state is the self. A sage king should govern the state the way someone fries fish. This applies just as well to tofu. Because in both cases, the way you fry tofu, the way you fry fish, is put it in, leave it alone, flip it once, leave it alone, it's done. Try to improve it, you'll mess it up. Yeah, so the Tao Te Ching calls for that kind of a world. And he says, in this kind of a world, people in this village are so content here, they're not curious about what's over there in the other village. I don't know if we need to literally do that, but some dosage of that I think is very useful. About attending to what's right here, what's right now. So you get this flavor among Buddhists in East Asia, even though they're not from the Taoist tradition, but this particular flavor of looking at things. So famously, the founder of one of the main Zen traditions in Japan called Soto Zen, Dogen, went to China, and then when he came back, often when a famous monk traveled in medieval Japan to China, is to procure new scriptures, new ritual materials, new material culture, fancy Buddha images. It's like high culture. Buddhism also represented high culture, not counterculture, like here. It wasn't the hippies that brought Buddhism to Japan. It was, like high culture. Uh, so everyone expected Dogen to come back with all sorts of impressive things, and apparently he came back with nothing. So the emperor at that time ignored him. So apparently somebody asked and said, so then all this time you were there, what did you at least learn something new? And he said, oh yes, I did. And I said, so what did you learn? So and again they're expecting a different Buddhist school of thought, a different philosophy, a different system. And his answer is like, I learned that my eyes are horizontal and my nose is vertical. There's a pun there. This is related to the Zen koan of what is your original face before your parents were born. Original face is a literal translation for true identity. In other words, who are you before your parents were born? And if you were to say, that's my last life and all that, no, wrong. That's not the answer. In fact, there's no answer. There's just questions. Questions to poke and to prod and to, if it's working, then you find yourself suspended in nowhere in particular. And holding that kind of state of suspension. And there is where fear and hope cannot touch you. That's the place where fear and hope cannot reach you. Not available. No forwarding address. Which is what many of these nuns express here. Take care of the body. This is your last. And what does it mean? Make sure it doesn't become a vehicle for death later on. Right now, for all of us, this body is the vehicle for death. How? What do we have to do so that this body is not a vehicle for death later on? The name you are called by means calm, upasama. You should cross the flood where death holds sway, hard as it is to cross. Again, this phrase, take care of the body. It is your last. But make sure it doesn't become a vehicle for death after this. Do what the Buddha taught. This is another nun, Vishaka. Do what the Buddha taught. There's nothing to be sorry about after doing it. Meaning follow those teachings. And then quick, wash the feet. Sit down off to one side. The simplicity of, this is the end of the day. So metaphorically, when you practice the Buddha's teachings, you become free. Then at the end of the day, wash your feet, sit aside. Once you see as suffering even the basic bits that make up everything, you won't be born again. Calm is how you will live once you discard the desire for more lives, for more and more and more. more information, more involvement, more this, more that. But once you see a suffering, even the basic bits that make up everything, here, it might sound kind of depressing. But this is where Buddhists are a little kind of weird. First, suffering is a big deal. Then when we understand more about suffering, it's not such a big deal. Until then, it's no longer a deal at all. It is just what it is. It's composite. It's conditional. Yeah, it's there. And then it'll be gone. So the irony here is it says that the only way you can be free from suffering is if you understand how all the bits that you are using to produce your sense of who you are, recognize that all those bits are burdensome. Lay them down. So, views, opinions, self-view. Big footnote. Don't let other people tell you that. Then something else is going on. Right? If someone is going to make you doubt yourself, that's something else going on. That's not practicing the Dharma. This will only work if you do it for yourself. With skill. And with skill means it's not a one fixed solution for. It's a multifaceted approach when we practice the Dharma. No one statement stands on itself. It's always a committee of statements, so to say. A combination. So, for example, you need to look deeply, we say. We need to pay deep attention. At the same time, if you pay deep attention and you have not cultivated a sense of spaciousness with regards to the looking, then it can become really claustrophobic. It can become really tight. Your practice of Dharma, your practice of meditation can become counterproductive. Then not only do you need the spaciousness, right, at the same time that you are tasting and trusting in this spacious quality, we also train in, we say lightning sharp, lightning, precise presence of mind. And that would ensure you don't space out and, become gone, right? Then at the same time, we also cultivate metta, friendliness, loving kindness, goodwill towards yourself, so that having tasted that, you can extend to others. Right? So all these parts have to come together. It's not just doing one thing. So here it says, once you see as suffering even the basic bits that make up everything, then you won't be born anymore. Born here, I don't, let's see, bhave, born. I would change it to, you won't become anymore. Bhave, become. It can also be translated as born. But I think become is good. Right? So the sense of becoming is that when I use becoming, to translate bhave, I use it with sort of like another state, so to say, in mind, which it is in contrast to. So in contrast to becoming, it's being. Yeah, being doesn't involve the stress of becoming. Then the uh, the epitome of the culture of becoming are those bumper stickers that say, "I would rather be dot dot dot." It doesn't matter what the dot 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 is, you know. I would rather be hunting. I would rather be reading. I would rather be, basket weaving. Yeah, I would rather be fishing. I would rather be there, this, that, that, all of that. Yeah, that's all what becoming is. Like I would rather, you know, be in the cafe now. Well, just go. Just be in the cafe and not becoming. But a lot of times, right, that eats up all our attention, our energy, because we would rather be somewhere else, somebody else, something else. Yeah. Now, one final one. This is a good one. Well, they're all good. This is uttered by Mutta. The name I am called by means freed. Yeah, Mutta, her name, it means freed. And I am quite free, well free from three crooked things: mortar, pestle, the mortar and pestle, so domesticity. Yeah. And I'm quite free, well free from three crooked things: mortar, pestle, and husband with his own crooked thing. I am freed from birth and death. What leads to rebirth has been rooted out. Mortar, pestle, and husband with his own crooked thing. Free now. This phrase comes back again and again. Several of other women in this collection. I'm free of these three things. I think one actually was like, mortar pestle counted as one, and then the husband and his crooked thing, and the in-laws, I think. Yeah, like, done. I'm freed. Self-control with the body, with speech, and with the mind, having pulled out craving down to the root, I have become cool, free. To become cool, to become free. Wandering about for alms, but weak. So this is an older woman now, this nun called Dhamma. Wandering about for alms, but weak, leaning on a stick with limbs shaking. I fell to the ground right there. And there, seeing the danger in the body, my heart was freed. So her awakening moment happened in the context of falling. Normally, pain is all the result that comes. But in this case, a very powerful way of experiencing the body got him to unclench. Just let body be. Therigatha, Poems of the First Buddhist Women by Hallisey, translated. This is important, Hallisey. 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 Pink color book. Now, hope and fear. So where we begin is, both hope and fear. So first, right, the topic is freedom from fears. Then I say, first we have to understand, with fear comes, always, it's fear is there because hope is there. And as somebody asked the question and pointed out, well, isn't hope the opposite of fear? Yeah, exactly. And that's why they are always together. Yeah? And that's why they're always together. Right? Like in the Heart Sutra, in a more philosophical way, right? You might have heard, because form, therefore emptiness. Before emptiness, therefore form. Yeah? It's actually not such a paradox. It's actually not so mystical even. It's just a simple fact. Yeah? So hope and fear, they always walk hand in hand. And then they struggle with each other. And one tends to win in any given point, at least the way we relate to these two things. One tends to win. And sometimes the side that wins we like, and sometimes the side that wins we don't like. But we have to first recognize how they are interdependent. So where does this come from? It comes from clinging. One window to look into. How does hope and fear work together? How do they turn up? How do they have control over us? It comes from clinging. Clinging is what we do when we grasp. And we grasp because we don't see with our heart. We may see with our intellect, our mind, clinging and the problems associated with clinging, but until the heart recognizes the burden of clinging and therefore willing to unclench and let go of clinging, until the heart has that capacity, we are always going to get pulled back in. Because it's addictive. Because even suffering gives some meaning. You're like, well, at least I know I'm alive. Well, that's a bad alternative to live, But sometimes that's the only alternative, Because between zombies and, whipping and, blaming yourself so that you have some sense of being present, neither of these are good ways of being, But Buddha says there's another way, which is what we can be when we release clinging. It's not an imperative. It's not a moral imperative. Again, it's not framed in those terms. It's not even about, oh, now you will become a good person when you don't cling. No, it's not placed within that context. It's really placed within the context of what is intelligent. How do we want to live? What is a lighter way of being in the world? And choices that we make makes all the difference. So when we talk about clinging, we can start with what's called the 4 bases of clinging. This is actually from that Karma book. That we didn't get to look at this section that much, but this is a good place to start. From these 4 clingings, I'm going to look at a second source, which is called the 4 devils. And that comes from a later Tibetan source, from this woman called Machik Labdrön, who is also the founder of this system of practice called Chut, which means to sever, to cut. So it's also about cutting. And these 4 bases of clinging is also to cut these 4 types of clinging. So let's look at what are these 4. So these 4 that are successively deeper levels of clinging. Deeper means harder to see that that's what's going on, and their hold on us is much more consequential. They are deeper and therefore harder to recognize and therefore harder to sever, because they are subtle. Because they are so subtle, or rather, it gets more and more subtle. So the subtlest is almost unrecognizable and imperceptible, and most people won't even think that it is a problem. But the Buddha says that the coarser levels of clinging are nothing but an aggregation of these subtle clingings. Let's start with the obvious ones. Clinging to sense objects, clinging to rules and customs, clinging to views, and clinging to impressions of what we are. This is the particular way that this author translates these four. More commonly, the last one especially is clinging to self. But that phrase, clinging to self, I think has been overused. Once I said that, you're like, oh yeah, I know. Then most of you think it's about stop being a jerk. Don't be an egomaniac. That's not what it's talking about here. It's talking about something way, 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 way more subtle, where you may not even recognize its selfishness, its jerkdom, it's, because it's very subtle and very innocent. But nonetheless, that's the real culprit. So the problem here doesn't come with horns and tail and, a fork. But it comes looking angelic. I was recently in Cusco, Peru, and was in this place where it's basically a building that was in. And this building is sandwiched between two lanes. One lane is called, the name is the Seven Devils. And the other lane is called the Seven Angels. And so it's between these two lanes. And the owner of the building, he said, but devils and angels in the context here has more to do with Indian sense of devils and angels, and not so much the Christian sense of devils and angel. Here it actually means this place here is in a state of balance. It's in between the seven devils and the seven angels. So for them, it's a state of balance, And then he said, and if you have to fear one over the other, it's the angels that I should be worried about and not the devils. Yeah, because often, right, the angelic looking is where the trouble is. So anyway, clinging to sense objects. So that is the most obvious form of clinging. We cling to pleasant, pleasurable, fulfilling, agreeable sense experiences. We want to see the things that we want to see. We don't want to see the things that we don't want to see. We want to smell the things that we want to smell. We don't want to smell the things that we don't want to smell. And even we can get into like, oh, this is not good for my health and this and that. Yeah, of course. I'm not denying that. But often, a lot more is going on than just say it's not good for my health or it's not good for the world. Often there's a lot more that comes with the I don't like. And all these I don't like are given lots of very convincing stories why you should not like. And I'm not saying that there aren't things in this world or actions in particular that, yes, Buddha says it's skillful, it's intelligent not to like. Yeah, just to be clear, as a big footnote, in the Buddha's teachings, it's not complete relativism. Actually, at the end of the day, the Buddha says there's bright karma and there's dark karma. Bright actions and results, and dark actions and results. And that naturally we all choose bright and fulfilling and pleasant results. You don't need to beat yourself over that. You don't need to desensitize yourself so that you cannot recognize, oh, this is the result of bright karma. In fact, no. You should promote bright karma. But in the midst of even promoting bright karma, much less, promoting dark karma, in the midst of promoting, growing bright karma, also understand the interdependent nature of these two things. That there is a third kind of karma that transcends the temporary devils and angel struggle. The devil and angel struggle only turns up when we don't understand how they are connected. So anyway, coming back to the most obvious level of clinging, so we cling to what we like. We cling to what we label as pleasurable, as pleasant, as pleasing. And when we strongly feel that towards certain things, already programmed into that is we strongly do what? Dislike. The opposite of that. And if we have no awareness and recognition of that, then we just run around helplessly, afraid of one and afraid of losing the other one. That's where fear comes up. Afraid of what we don't like, afraid of losing what we like. When we don't see and understand, likes and dislikes are temporary. They don't last that long. What lasts is the habit impressions that arise with regards to those experiences. They linger. And that's what we have to work on dispelling. And that's what we can work on dispelling. The heart impressions that register. When the more active aspect of mind or consciousness, the one that collects data, right, succeeds in collecting data, then that data comes in, it leaves behind a heart impression. And the heart impression has a certain logic to it, but it's illogical. It functions its own way. And often cannot be reasoned with. Reasoning cannot reach that level, often. Its existence have been habitualized. And that's both the good and the bad news. The bad news is, once it's habitualized a certain way, and if the way tends in the direction of suffering, then it seems to have its own mechanism of self-perpetuating. The good news is, you can also undo that. Takes effort. It takes effort. But you can undo that. You can undo that program. So this clinging to sense objects, we have to begin by How to overcome this clinging? We have to begin by making some choices about what I would call simplifying our lives. Not practicing austerity, not torturing yourself, not depriving you of fun things, but all the religions say is bad for me, but they are fun. Now that I'm a spiritual person, I have to give them up. No, nobody said that. At least not in this tradition. You only give them up if you actually see them as unnecessarily complicating your life. Set it aside. Don't need to hate it. Don't need to call it the demon. Set it aside because it's complicating your life. Put it down, let it down. So it has to begin with simplifying our lives. So yes, the consequence of simplifying our lives is we practice restraint with regards to what we consume, whether what we consume is food and stuff or ideas and opinions. We have to begin by drawing some lines, having some restraint. And that takes discipline. It's not just sitting around wishing, oh yes, no more clinging. No, it has to come with, right? Saying no. And as to what to say no to, you have to discover where you have the most complicated relationship with in the realm of things. And things means, things you see, things you smell, things you taste, things you touch, things you hear. That not just material things necessarily, but those experiences. The second level of clinging is with reference to rules and customs. So that definition of tradition becomes helpful here. Tradition is just peer pressure from dead people, right? That can be helpful. But here, it takes on special meaning for those who are training within a system. If you don't have a system and you quickly want to practice the second lack of clinging, then you may throw out the method that you need. So the second one I won't encourage so much if you don't, to start with, have a tradition, have a discipline. If you already don't have that, then you're still throwing things out. That's not how it's intended. This is intended especially for those in this context who have taken on, say, a monastic life. And monastic life, in the end, to me, it's the furthest you go in practicing, in choosing simplicity. Yeah. So to me, that's what monastic life is about. It's not even like depriving yourself. You should deprive yourself. You should sacrifice yourself. No, it's not that. It's really the right way to kind of live a monastic life should be based on seeing the burdensome nature of holding all of this together. You now put them aside. You now set aside and say, well, other people who are stronger, braver, sillier, you can go ahead. Yeah? I put that aside. So then you picked up a monastic form, for example. And then you translate this into your life, okay? What this means for you in your life, monastic or not, which basically non-monastic, okay? So you translate this. But the original context is, so now that you have given up and put aside, and you have chosen simplicity, that simplicity comes with a set of over 200 rules and regulations. Yeah. And many of those have to do with making communal living less messy, less stressful. Some of them are very practical things, like whoever joins the monastic community 1 minute ahead of you is to be considered senior to you. Because we live in a linear world, right? So there's always who is standing in front and who is standing behind. So to clear out all the unnecessary wranglings over what it means for someone to be in front of you, what it means for someone to be behind you, in a way is sort of an arbitrary rule. Buddha says, whoever joins this community before you, you consider your senior. Pay attention, he's not saying they are more evolved, they are more developed, they are more holy. Although people project these things. But in fact, I would say no, he's not saying that. He's just saying, we need a clean way to live together. A non-messy way. Yeah? Unfortunately, I think like in Buddhist communities, like monastic communities, following strictly to this rule has kind of gone away. Where they might privilege, oh, this is a very learned person. And then they kind of would walk ahead. I mean, yes, I can recognize the desire to recognize, someone who is learned, But where it causes problems in relation to the simple rule the Buddha gave is, learned or not, you can always debate, He's learned in this way, but then she's learned in that way. Right? Oh, this is a great meditator. It's like, well, you say so. I don't know what's going on up in his head. Right? All these so you're introducing things that you can argue over. Whereas, no, he joined at 3:45 p.m., you joined at 3:50. End of story. Right? So there are rules like this. So actually they're quite detailed. Over 200. A lot of them has to do with living in community. They're not even moral, ethical things. I mean, there are those. Yeah? So it's within that context saying, now that you have simplified your life, that your clinging to sense experiences have been simplified, and you have adopted this set of traditions and observations, you also now need to be careful about how your clinging to sense experiences may now be transferred to clinging to these rules. Yeah. I read here, everyone uses rules and customs to regulate their lives or occupations, forms of etiquette, customs around what food to eat, at what time, on what day of the week, and around how I like my office to be arranged, as well as religious observances and social taboos. But there is a tendency to go into automatic or to get dogmatic about one's own system. One feeling I had about committing to Buddhist practice was to get out of this, to be more spontaneous, to live in the here and now. But after about 3 years with nothing to do, nothing to belong to, and therefore nothing to be spontaneous about, I really appreciated things like morning chanting every day, observances around handling and washing of the alms bowl, and a training in conventions that helped to keep me focused in daily life in a way that wasn't about me achieving or being rewarded. That is when it becomes clinging. When it becomes like a mark that you wear around you. I am so in sync with the rules. I'm such an upstanding member of this center because I wear the right thing, say the right thing, and then also I therefore have the authority to enforce that right thing. Because you have deprived your neurosis the realm of unlimited sense objects to go crazy over. Now, watch out for transferring that neurosis to fixing the rules and having that training serve counterproductive purposes. Even surrounding the idea of, oh, I'm Buddhist. And as Buddhist, I have to ... Now it becomes another burden. Put that down. The next one is even more subtle. It's clinging to views, clinging to opinions. Even noble view, the Four Noble Truths, can be turned into a type of clinging. Being rigid about that. Much the same thing occurs with the next layer of clinging to views, typified as views of becoming and not becoming. What is it talking about? So again, the word becoming, bhave, clinging to views of becoming and not becoming. These are the ways we extend out to direct experience to conjure up a future. That is, we either add continuity, purpose, and trajectory in life, or deny that there is any purpose. We either get involved with action or development, or declare that nothing can really be done, that everything's impermanent, so there's no point. So then, either this or that. This is the becoming and not becoming. Bhava, vibhava. That makes us unable to relate to the ongoing and uncertain nature of conditions. Rather than relating to all our moments, the moments that turn up as they are, we put on labels. Those are the views. That's the clinging to views. We become dogmatic. They carry the passion and thirst that initiate karma, dark karma, so you don't get out of cause and effect by following their signals. The harder you work at getting things finished and solid, the more that craving for becoming sets up new goals. But saying that there's no goal, that is all an illusion, and let's not bother with the future, is the not becoming. It's another view. And this is all about setting up controls. Because you are afraid that if you don't set some kind of control, it's all going to spin out of control. And where does that come from? That fear of everything spinning out of control? The final clinging. The final clinging. And so here he says, even our attempts at getting enlightened can follow the becoming and not becoming bias. Is it about having the ultimate experience of deathlessness? Or is it about final cessation? These are the two ways sometimes people talk about the goal. Being or cessation. Again, these are labels that we slap onto things that we feel we have no control. And instead of recognizing, that's what's going on, and then stop, relinquish. That's how you sever clinging. It's not a violent job with a lot of drama and sound and special effects. It's really about dropping it, leaving it alone. Okay? So this final clinging is the clinging to self, right? Now, what we're talking about here, as I said, this is the most subtle one, clinging to self. Here, right, it has implications about selfishness, altruism, all of that. But that's very coarse. That's like way down the road already. Here, when it talks about clinging to self, is clinging to anything that we kind of put there and think that doesn't change. It's like the last grasp on control. That there's this some nebulous thing that we call self, the divine self. And positing that because we need that. Instead of seeing that, where is that need coming from? What gave rise to that subtle form of clinging? And not seeing, right, the cause and effect of that, we put something in its place. Call it a self. Call it an entity. Call it an essence. And we further impute that, extend that to other people too. Oh, that's just how she is. That's just how he's always. We're giving more solidity to something that is just situational and temporary. So all our hopes and fears is fed by this clinging, this thirst. So in teaching this is identified as the second noble truth that the Buddha taught. That there is suffering is the first noble truth. That suffering has a cause and that cause is clinging is the second noble truth. So there it says, clinging to be and clinging to not to be. That's another way of talking about these clingings. To be and not to be. That is the question. Yeah, that is the question. And the answer is, can we see that either side of where you lean towards is feeding the very thing that you don't want? Release that. So these are the four clingings, right? A slightly different way of essentially talking about the same thing is, as I said, in Majit Labdrön, this Tibetan woman lived 12th, 13th century in Tibet. And it said that she formalized a system of practice that was so famous to the point that some people even imported that or exported that from Tibet to India. And that's a big deal to say that. Because one of the things about Tibetan culture is, at least until recently, if something is good, it has to come from India. Because there's so much admiration for India, and that's because the Buddha was born in India. There's so much admiration. And majority of the Tibetans never been to India. And probably when you take them to India, they're, I need to get out. They're from like the snow mountains, Go down to the jungles in India, You won't last for 2 days. But culturally, intellectually, if something is good, it has to come from India. Especially if it is Buddha's teachings. It has to come from India. But they say in this one case, what Machik formulated was so amazing. They say, maybe just legend or I don't know, like even the Indians came to Tibet to say, can we have this? So this is how much Tibetans kind of value this particular approach that she developed, she formulated, and she taught. So in her system, she says, so there are various words that can be translated into demons or devils. So one is dre, the word dre, and one is dude, dude, yeah, the dudes. Dude has the Indian equivalent, which is called Mara. And Mara, in the Buddhist context, is called the evil one, Papiyan, the evil one. It's said that Siddhartha, on the brink of his awakening, of his enlightenment, Mara came to try to derail him. He came in various forms. First he came and he tried to create self-doubt in Siddhartha, basically saying, you're wasting your time here. In fact, you have been born into privilege. You really want to help others? You really want to help yourself? Go home and be a good king. Why are you here sitting under this stupid tree hoping for something to happen? Don't you recognize the privilege you were born with? You have a kingdom that you can be a good king and feed everyone and make everyone happy. Go home. So tried that. Didn't work. Siddhartha said, I've done that for many lifetimes. But the same problem still persists. So don't tell me that I don't have what it takes and that I should be investing my energy in something else. I've already done that for many lifetimes. I'm done with that. Then next, Mara sent temptations. So it said like the 3 daughters of Mara came to tempt Siddhartha to go back into a life of sensual pleasures. And then it said that failed. Then finally, fear. So Mara sent his army to come attack. And it's like Lord of the Rings, those battles, the description, really it was like that. And so they came, and it said that the Buddha meditated or radiated loving kindness towards the hostile forces. And from a state of loving kindness, enlightenment happened. Loving kindness itself is not enlightenment, but from the state of all-pervasive loving kindness, his mind became so bright, right? And that's the ultimate kind of brightness. It became so bright that he cut through all the confusions. It said that in that moment he gained 3 knowledges. It was successive. First he gained complete knowledge over his own previous lifetimes. And what you can understand from that is that he saw that it's not personal, this process. But every point of this process, there is the trap or the opportunity to make it personal, to make it narrow, to make it tight. But when he saw all his previous lifetimes, how can you assert any persons from every lifetime to lifetime? It's a process, it's a continuity, it's not a thing. He saw that. Secondly, he saw the lifetimes of other people and how the mechanism of how these lifetimes unfolded is based on karmic patterns, karmic programming. So then he saw that this is not a haphazard process. It unfolds according to this natural workings of cause and effect. So first knowledge he gained is not personal. Second knowledge, while it's not personal, it unfolds according to a certain pattern. And that pattern is the pattern of karmic causality. And third, he gained the knowledge of, and today I have destroyed all that causes this process to continue uncontrollably. Then today I have become freed. These are the three knowledges. And ultimately, is gaining these three knowledges, gaining them deeply, that takes us beyond fear and hope. Yeah? So hope, right, and fear, here in Majik's system, she calls them Hla Dre. Hla, literally gods. Dre, literally demons. Dude is another category. The demonology of the Tibetans are very rich. There are different ghosts, different spirit beings, different names, different characters, different behaviors. When I was in Cusco, I got inspired to remember growing up in Malaysia. Malaysia is a multicultural society with a dominant group that is Malay and Muslim, 50, close to 60%. But then there are major groups, Chinese ethnicity, which is my cultural heritage, then Indian ethnicity, and then because we live in the northern part of the peninsula, bordering Thailand, so there's a lot of Thai influence as well. So I grew up in a culture where there is Malay Muslim, there is Chinese, there is Indian, there is Thai, which means we have 4 times the number of ghosts and demons that you guys have. And then among the Thais, there are all these ghosts. And all the different behaviors of the different ghosts. Yeah, of course they are there, right? And then among the Chinese, we have all these ghosts, and they have all these types of behaviors. So every time something goes wrong, you have to figure out which of these 4... Did we offend a Thai ghost, or did we offend a Malay ghost? And then you have to address that appropriately. You don't go to a Chinese shaman to solve a Thai problem. So my growing up was filled with, that kind of ghosts and demons. And gods and demons. So here, Majik says, gods and demons are our basic way of relating to everything in this world. Gods and demons. So, in one set of instructions, she gave like very detailed, and we're not going to go through this, but just to give you an idea, she said, there are gods and demons as designated by worldly people, those who are untrained. Gods and demons that are designated. Then there are gods and demons by their essential mode of being. Gods and demons superimposed on observable phenomena. Gods and demons that are natural. Gods and demons of karmic causality. And the ultimate gods and demons. 6 types she articulated. What are gods and demons as designated by worldly people? Here is her explanation. What is called a god is anything that appears objectively to worldly people as nice, pleasing, uplifting, or inspiring. Whatever appears objectively to the mind as ugly and unpleasant, or in a frightening, life-threatening form, that is called demon. In short, whatever helps is called a god, whatever harms is called a demon. Gods and demons, by their essential mode of being, never mind this one. There is talking about, I'll say it. It's talking about basically, there you can say those who are still stuck in a state of confusion and those who are free from confusion. So that's one category. The next one, gods and demons superimpose on observable phenomena. What are they? When many paranormal things of different sorts occur, such as flowers and crops suddenly sprouting in the unseasonable wintry cold, or non-humans practically displaying their forms openly and making many predictions, or visible rainbows and figures, people say that it's spiritual powers, or it's sacred, or it's a god, or it's glory. They superimpose their ideas and make it into a god. So funny signs that just simply occurs, he says, because of certain natural things happening. But we superimpose and say, oh, that's a bad luck sign. Oh, that's a good luck sign. And accordingly, they act upon us. Accordingly, they act upon us. In the same manner, when out-of-season snakes and frogs and such appear in the wintertime, and many other weird and frightening sights occur, such as the appearance of unseasonable otters, or this one creature called Pir in the summer eating a lot of creatures, or fish flopping on the dry land, or frightening, dreadful, ugly shapes appearing before the eyes, we then call these demons. And he says, when there's too much rain, we call that demon. When there's not enough rain, we call that demon. When there's just enough rain, we call that God. Huh? But the clouds don't care. Clouds don't care. Neither good or bad, gods or demons. It's just the conditions are there, then lots of rain will come. The conditions are not there, no rain will come. Then the gods and demons of karma. The gods and demons of karma. And then the final, then that's basically, that's what I was talking about, how, no, it's not completely relative. There's bright karma, there's dark karma. We should choose carefully what kind of karma, because based on what kind of karma we create, that's the kind of reality that we will inhabit. Then the ultimate absolute gods and demons, which is talking about the state free from confusion, and the state that is under the power of confusion. So in these 6 groups, he says, 4 of them can change any time, and they're unreliable. 2, we have to consider to be definite, which is the last type, the absolute, gods and demons, meaning enlightenment and confusion. And he says that we have to accept as unchanging. That's not willy-nilly. And secondly, cause and effect, he says, we have to accept as unchanging. Even though, yes, they interdependently arise, therefore they don't turn up by their own power, but there is a pattern that they always follow without mistake. In other words, any of our actions that we engage in, any of actions, our responses that come up that are under the power of confusion, or sometimes we say the 3 poisons, then they are necessarily productive of suffering. Where the poisons are not present, then they will, without choice even, appear as results that we like, results that we want. But in the midst of sorting out, and recognizing what we want and what we don't want, we should never forget the interdependent nature of these two. So these are the demons and gods, and in this context, she also talks about severing or cutting the 4 devils. These are the dudes, the Maras. So here she talks about tangible Mara, intangible Mara, Mara of exaltation, and Mara of inflation. Inflation. Oh, yes, that's a Mara. We need to. Yeah. We voted the new people to fix this 4th Mara, apparently. We wish them luck. We don't need to be negative about it. I mean, I know, maybe majority of you are feeling very triggered, but we should wish them luck, because if it can be fixed, then great, Even if you don't think it can be, we should not wish them failure. Take them at their word. Okay, please fix it. Anyway, tangible devil, intangible devil, devil of exaltation, devil of inflation. These are the 4 devils of ego fixation, self-fixation. It comes out in these 4 ways. Tangible devil is equivalent to the clinging to sense experiences. So here he says, tangible devil is the form that is seen by the eye. Attraction arises in relation to fine form, and the attitude of aversion arises towards bad form. In the same way, good and bad sounds, smells, tastes, and textures occur as the sense objects of the ear, nose, tongue, and body, and produce attraction or aversion. And this is called the devil of dualistic grasping. We lose our understanding of the temporary nature of what we label as good and bad. I mean, on some level, we all know, it's based on our labels. On some level, I do think we do know, we recognize that. But the problem is we forget, that they have the status that they have is a lot of it has to do with the perceiver. So some people hate some foods and some people love that same food. Labels. Yeah. Therefore, any good or bad thing that one clings to with attachment is a devil. A devil to be severed, to be cut. Intangible devil. The intangible devil arises like this. So pay attention, and don't let your mind wander. That which is called intangible devil does not appear as an actual object of the senses. Rather, it is any of the good or bad concepts that arise in your own mind. That's the labeling process itself. That which is labeled is the tangible devils. That habit of labeling is the intangible devils. And so tangible and intangible devils, they need each other to exist. Rather, it is any of the good or bad concepts that arise in your mind. They are called demons when you apprehend them as frightful appearances that cause terror. and called gods when you apprehend them as pure appearances that cause cheerful and pleasurable experiences. But the mind itself, the heart, the nature itself that fixates on the duality of faults and qualities such as good and bad, good God, bad demon, itself never had even a hair tip's worth of actual reality in its basic ground. Therefore, it is known as groundless, rootless emptiness. Emptiness can also maybe be translated as openness, spaciousness. We don't like empty. We always like fill it, fill it, fill it. Yeah? But this word emptiness arose from a culture that was one of the first cultures to use like zero. I mean, originated in the Arabic world, but it quickly came to India, and people like, we like that. So connotation is different when they use emptiness. Here is talking about without limits, without constraints, without needing to build boxes, spacious. That the mind itself, the heart itself, its nature is like this. But because maybe it's too overwhelming, so we box it in and say, this is my house. I mean, houses are basically boxed in spaces. Then we burn each other's houses. One of the most ancient ways of terrorizing someone is to go burn their house. There's so much, Second to the body is the house. If you really want to traumatize someone, burn their house. No, don't do that. The devil of exaltation. Now, okay, before that she says, don't try to block the sensations that arise in the mind. So the solution is not to suppress this labeling process. It's really not. It's also not like, mess it up until you can't tell. Wait, am I supposed to like this or not like this? No. That's also not the solution. So, but he says, she said, don't try to block the sensations that arise. Also, don't block any of the various good or bad thoughts and memories. Don't even entertain any notions about them. Whatever thoughts and memories arise, don't hold on to them by dwelling and reflecting on them. Instead, so it's not saying, like, okay, how this may play out wrongly is what we would call spiritual bypassing. Not dealing with things that needs to be undone. And all in the name of, it's all empty. You can't do that. What it's saying here is, recognize that mind itself is the clear nature of vast space, and any thought or memory whatsoever can arise within it. Just as waves and such can appear in the ocean without a mover, so any kind of good or bad thoughts arise in the mind without a mover. The practical, I think, implication of this is you don't need to assign blame to yourself or to someone else. But you can legitimately and skillfully address that this situation has arisen. This set of qualities have turned up. And this is the kind of suffering that it is produced. Without assigning blame. Without saying there is a mover, and that mover is the culprit. Now, the devil of exaltation is said to be the mental attachment in which one delights and exalts, thereby giving rise to a great joy. So he says, what is this? He says, the causes of it might be a tremendous amount of worldly prestige, gain, or fame, a large retinue, seeing the face of Buddhas, pacifying the pangs of disease by subduing demons with the power of mantra, the arising of special meditative experiences, the arising of clairvoyance in vivid dreams, and so on and so forth. So when things go well for you, and you get carried away, whether it's worldly things or even spiritual things. This is the exaltation. Closely related is the final devil, the devil of inflation. Since the roots of these three devils, the first three, reach down to inflation, it is extremely important to sever the root of inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is fixating on I, self. Given that self-fixation is the root of all problems and is the cause of wandering in confused existence, it is therefore the devil that withholds the attainment of freedom. As long as we are under the power of this devil of inflation, inflation here means is talking about, I think you could also translate it as exaggeration. To inflate, to exaggerate. And it's so interesting, to say that it's inflated is not to say that there's nothing there at all. There is. There is something. But that something is not how you think of it as, which is often exaggerated, inflated. So this comes back to there is and there's no problem with the commonsensical self. What I call the self that goes to the store, that self that does laundry, but when you hate doing laundry, then the exaggerated self turns up. Then the inflation takes place. Likewise, if you love your laundry, or someone else's laundry, and have no clarity about what's going on, that it becomes the devil of exaltation. Yeah? So all our fears and hopes. Hope is basically asking for what is not. Wanting for what is not creates what? Frustration. The problem with desire is not desire itself. The problem with desire is not all desires can be fulfilled, and when they cannot be fulfilled, frustration comes. And frustration is what drains us. So in that way, right, we're not saying, right, the conventional way we use the word hope, don't lose hope. Yes, continue to say that to people. Don't lose hope. It is not final. It's not forever. Keep doing your best. Yes, you can still use the word hope. So whatever the word is, here, hope is the other side of fear. And in both cases, it's not accepting what is. What is what is. Then, not seeing what is, we either fall in the direction of fear or we fall in the direction of hope. So both hope mongering and fear mongering are in the same business. Mongering. And in both cases, there's no clarity about what is. Instead, we're lost in the realm of what I want it to be. what I think it should be, what I want it to be. Again, even there, I think, realistically, like you can say, or at least I would say, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, it's reasonable. Like, well, I hope, I wish. It's not like, it's not a commandment that you cannot work, hope, you cannot wish. But every time you hope and you wish, you need to have understanding and recognition. I'm engaging in some kind of other than what is. And don't forget that. Don't lose sight of that. Then there is healthy hope. There is healthy fear. If we completely ignore necessary and healthy fear, then as a species, we won't be around for a long time. Yeah? Healthy fear prevents us from doing stupid things. But underlying it has to be deep attention and clear seeing that arises from that. Do not immediately surrender over to impressions, and particularly that heart impressions, the way we emotionally respond and react to anything. And we should have a healthy sense of suspicion about that. So if you want to be suspicious about anything, because it's fashionable these days, everything that turns up, you're like, oh, I don't know. The cabal is behind that, or whatever you think, is behind that, deep state, Democrats, demons, gods. Yeah? Turn your suspicion to whatever you see. Be suspicious in a skillful way. And maybe it is right. Yeah? Your gut sense tells you this is wrong. And when verified, you're like, oh yeah, that's true. All right? Just saying that you should have healthy suspicion, right, doesn't mean that everything is equal. No, it's not. Because as long as we're living in the relative realm, no, everything is not equal. We make choices. Buddha says, make skillful choices. What makes them skillful? Less suffering for yourself, less suffering for others. That's the baseline. The next level, right? More happiness for yourself, more happiness for others. That's a little tricky. Yeah. We are more in agreement as to what is a non-desirable. As to what is desirable, that does get a little complicated. So what you want the good that you want for others. And they're like, but that's not the good I want. So that is related to exaltation, the devil of exaltation. So even when we're experiencing what we think is fulfillment and satisfaction and things are going well, watch out that it doesn't turn into this devil of exaltation. All of this is not to make you more paranoid than you probably already are. If that's what happens, then you're using this in the wrong way. You know this is being used in the right way when, if you use it, you feel less and less a burden. You feel that there's more space, more space for you to more clearly consider what has arisen and whether to pick it up or to lay it aside. You feel more space, more ability to make those choices rather than being driven by this urgency, this panic, this fear, this paranoia. It's just ironic, you know. No other time in human history are we living at a time where, by certain objective metrics, it has never been better. Less infant mortality, less birth mortality, at the very beginning of all of it. Less women are dying because of childbirth, and then once born, less babies are dying. We're living longer. We are more secure than ever as an objective metric, but that is not how we feel. So why? Why? You know? Science and technology has helped us to secure many insecure experiences and spaces. But instead of giving rise to more confidence, there is a big difference between confidence and arrogance. Arrogance is a compensation for a felt sense of loss of confidence, of loss of control. Then it comes out as arrogance. It comes in an insecure place. I can tell you that, like, I think my style, my nature is like shy, growing up. Then it manifests as arrogance and other people perceive as arrogance, but it comes from an insecure place. So that shyness, but it's because we feel like we're not in control. Despite everything, as the objective metrics is like, no, food is safer. Now more than ever. Yeah? I live in Asheville after all, Those of you who come from the other side of the mountains maybe don't know, or maybe you know, but I live in Asheville after all. Yes, this is bad, that is bad, that is bad. Don't eat this, don't eat that, don't drink that, don't, Live here long enough, you have some weird ideas about what you should eat and what you should not eat. The day when that happened to me, one of my friends was like, well, you have arrived. I'm like, no, it actually helps me. And he was like, yep, that's what everybody says. But that's how my body is. Yep, that's also what they say. But unchecked, that's just another burden. That's just another burden. And as long as we don't see the burdensome nature of that, we will keep feeding it and keep getting exhausted and keep feeding it and keep getting exhausted. Yeah, so if we want to be just completely rational and, materially based evidence in the positive sense of the word, of the expression, then there is no better time to be alive with the objective metrics. But that's not the only reality we have. In fact, the stronger reality that we all live in is not in the material world. It's in this other world that we have all created. And that world is a frightening world. It's a fearful world. It's a suspicious world. But that world, unlike the material world, can shift and change a lot easier and faster than the material world. But so much of our efforts have gone in the direction of securing the material world. Then in terms of the non-material world, whatever efforts have gone there has gone in the wrong direction. Feeding the fears, feeding the suspicion, feeding the sense of things are wrong. Yes, there are things that are wrong that is happening in the world, you know. But the response need not be a shutting down and defeat it. There's still Tara activity that can happen. So we can pray to Tara, and maybe we begin by praying to Tara, or Kuan Yin, or the Virgin Mary. We can begin with that. And throughout Buddhist cultures, there's also a lot of that. And in that sense, it's a theistic approach. But that's okay. That's where we start. If that resonates with you. Or you belong to that group that says, much more comfortable with, prayers addressed to, oh, forces of the universe. Saying, I don't think gravity cares what you think. But nonetheless, different folks, different strokes, Sorry, I'm just like purging the years of sitting through previously religiously affiliated colleges who have now no more religious affiliation, but still go through the ceremony of starting every meeting with a prayer. And so, in order not to offend everyone, they all turn these prayers into, oh, forces of the universe. Please, just say Jesus and let's get over with this. Like, why are you addressing gravity? Let gods just be gods, Whether it's a big beard or, blonde or whatever, fine. Just pick one and let's just pray and then move on with business. Confession of my baggage. The more important point is, we can start with the asking for help. And that includes asking for people in our lives for help. They are Tara too. But they are not, but don't go to them expecting them to be perfect. That's the thing. Don't put that burden on anyone. Don't put that burden on your mom and your dad. There's this whole idea of like, oh, the perfect mom, the perfect dad. And then of course it's like, and mine sucked. There you go. Hope and fear. Right? No. Tara is everywhere. Tara can help. Ask. Ask for help. Now here is where I would say there is a difference between just that and taking the next step. Taking the next step is, may I become Tara? Yeah. That's the next step. Not only can I rely on Tara to help me overcome these fears, I can become Tara for someone else to become free from these fears. You don't have to wait until you are perfect. We're messy, One moment we want to be Tara, next moment we're ready to pick a fight with no one in particular. because something went wrong. We are not happy. Recognize that. When you recognize that, you can still be Tara and be inconsistent. It's not an either or game. It's a messy game. So we can embody Tara, we can be Tara, and we can call to Tara for help. You're not in this alone. And sometimes the way this is presented, it sounds like it's all just inside you. So then you imagine like, oh, this prayer to Tara is just, like Tara is just my inner goodness. But there will be times in our lives where we are completely incapable of feeling that inner Tara. But there are outer Taras, of course. Whether in this moment I have the capacity to love and to care or not, doesn't mean that there aren't people out there who have the capacity to love and care and to act with wisdom. I have that capacity, but it's not limited to me. Yeah, so for tomorrow, if you are coming tomorrow, there is a ceremony of being introduced to Tara, the goddess, the deity, but also the next step of being connected to Tara in even a more intimate way as recognizing that my nature is Tara. There is a Buddhist teacher, Tibetan Buddhist teacher, who lived a few years in the US and then finally settled in Australia, Trale Kyabgun Rinpoche. Then I think he actually joined started taking classes in Western psychology in like university psychology departments. And then in that context, he met many of his future students, people who became his students, who are in that field. So he has an unusual high percentage of students who are from that particular area, in part because he signed up for some of those courses and met the disciples there. So anyway, one time I read about this. He was in some kind of conference, psychology conference, not really Buddhist specifically, but maybe there was a panel on Buddhist psychology. And so then one of his students thought, this is when I will finally pin him down and let him give an exact answer. And so the students, during question and answer, said, so Rinpoche, sometimes when I listen to you talk about Tara, the way you talk about her makes it sound like she's real. But other times when I listen to you talk about Tara, it sounds like she's not real. So can you once and for all clarify this? What do you think? Is Tara real or not real? Right? By real or not real, it's loaded, right? What we mean by real or not real, even that, think about it. Well, what do you mean by real or not real? Anyway, the story didn't explain, but you can kind of explore the whole range of. But this student said, please, on record, is Tara real or not real? Apparently Rinpoche answered, Tara is real, but she knows that she's not real. And that is how you can become Tara. Know that Tara is real, but know that you're not real. Then you can become Tara for yourself and for others. tomorrow when we look at when we do go through the empowerment, we will also look at that. So please come back with this, or if you're afraid that you'll forget, hide this somewhere in here. Don't tell anyone. You come tomorrow earlier and you find your copy. Here, quickly, if you look at page 4, there is the fear of lions, there is the fear of elephants, there is the fear of fire, snake, thieves, robbers, yeah. Imprisonment, that's the shackles. River, meaning drowning. And then demons. So those are very real, like threats. Life in India. Lions, elephants, fire, floods, snakes, robbers. Right after robbers, it's basically government, shackles. Even in ancient India, there's an irony there that is recognized. There are the thieves, and then there is the government. Police and thief, right? It's like usually same family. Shackles, then flooding, but each of those there are inner correspondences, right? So lion is pride, elephant is ignorance, fire is anger, snake is jealousy, thief. Thieves are perverted beliefs, mistaken views. Shackles is avarice, attachment. River is desire. And demons, what are demons? Doubt. Doubt here is talking about suspicions. Being suspicious of things, of situations, everything. Paranoia. Doubt here is not talking about, like, I don't know if I believe this. It's not talking about that. So these are the 8 fears. The outer fears and the inner fears. And it said that Tara can protect you from both. If you're able to relate to Tara in a way, the outer Tara, then she has the power to protect you from these 8 things. Now, a big footnote is, right, we also don't want to, especially relating to the outer Tara, so whether it's Tara or Kuan Yin or Virgin Mary and all of that, I think we have to have some self-awareness and not kind of crudely think, well, if I pray to her, I'll be kept safe. And then it can become a form of like arrogance. Like, well, I'm godly, that's why, my house didn't burn down. The flood didn't take me. And so then necessarily those who die, they must be bad people. We don't necessarily walk around thinking like that. But that's underlying, like, I'm special. Also be careful with that. There's something to be said about, having a trust that Mama is going to take care of you. Right? There's something to be said about that. I think it's very powerful. That belief, is very deep. We don't need to, like, destroy that belief. We need to grow from there. Right? Because it is a fact that we are alive today because of those gods. Right? Without those gods, you would not be alive today. So there are those gods, goddesses that can protect us. But don't let it deteriorate into, well, because we are chosen, because we are favored, because we have, therefore. That doesn't stand up, to, simply it doesn't. If you want to go that route, then you follow those rules of like accounting for all the good and the bad. It doesn't explain at all. So like the idea, like, it was fashionable, right, for a while. When hurricanes came, it came because of sinners. And when it came to a religious area, nobody talked about that. And when it went to New Orleans, yeah, well, those degenerates. Yeah, when it came to a religious area, nobody talked about that. So be careful not to fall into that kind of simplistic, I would say. Anyway, we've reached the 2 o'clock point. I always say, I don't want your people and your pets to resent you being here. If you have time, you can help us put things away. If you have to go, we certainly understand. I've already exceeded our time together. Then, if I will see you tomorrow, try to come a few minutes earlier to kind of settle. Then you are less, kind of in a rush. Because tomorrow is a ritual experience, and so it's a little different from what we're doing today. And if you can't come tomorrow, no worries. You can still join us on Zoom. We have many friends on Zoom. And see all of you. And not right now. We have already exceeded. But we take nonetheless a moment of dedication. The idea of dedication is like whatever good that we have experienced, whatever positive merit that we feel that has been created, accumulated, like we want to remember to share this with everyone, to share this with others. All the people in your life, all the people that you know, you don't know, you think, may this be a cause for them finding their meaning, their happiness, their freedom from suffering. So take a moment to do this. Then for those of you who know this chant, you can join. This chant basically says, the awakened mind, called bodhicitta, where it has not arisen, may it arise. Where it has arisen, may it increase and become stronger and stronger until it manifests as freedom, as liberation, as clarity, as Buddhahood. Chanchu sem chorem poche ma ke pa nam ke gyur che ke pa nyam pa me pa yang go ne gong du pe war shu. So just so you have some understanding, awareness, so tomorrow the empowerment or the blessing, so before I can be the conduit for that blessing, I need to connect to the blessing. So there is the self-empowerment, and so some volunteers will be here by 7:30 to set up the space, and then today, right after this, we're going to set up the necessary, shrine and objects for it. Then at 8 tomorrow, I start my self-empowerment, so that by 10, I'll be ready to connect you to that source of blessing. So that's what else is going on, it's kind of behind the scenes. Yeah? So thank you so much. Have a great afternoon. Happy Mardi Gras, I think.